Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we're stepping way back in time, to the year 1291, and we are going to look at a truly cinematic breakdown of how an entrenched 200-year empire was completely wiped off the map. We're diving into the Siege of Acre. Now, this is an absolute masterclass in how sheer, stubborn defensive power was finally unraveled, not just by throwing more guys at a wall, but by a brilliant and frankly terrifying combination of military engineering, subterranean chemistry, and intense psychological warfare. It's this fascinating historical blueprint for solving seemingly impossible problems, and we're going to see exactly how this 13th century operation played out. So here's the million-dollar question. How do you conquer an unconquerable city? Because by 1291, the coastal fortress of Acre was the ultimate stronghold for the Crusaders in the Middle East. I mean, they had fortified this place with the absolute most advanced defensive technology of their era. We're talking massive, towering stone walls, terrifyingly deep trenches that would literally swallow up advancing infantry, and garrisons packed with thousands of the most elite European knights. The defensive setup was so physically impenetrable that your standard traditional brute force attacks, they were completely failing. The Muslim Mamluk army surrounded the city on April 6th, but they were staring down a wall that just simply wouldn't break.
And this standoff immediately exposed a massive gap in leadership on the ground. On one hand, you've got King Henry II, the nominal king of Jerusalem. He shows up from Cyprus with warships and soldiers, takes one look at the sheer reality of this siege, and realizes, yeah, these traditional defenses might not hold forever. And his response? He literally flees back to Cyprus by sea in the dead of night. Right? Now contrast that with his opponent, the Mamluk Sultan, Al-Ashraf Khalil. This guy was only 28 years old, he's energetic, he's totally resolute, and he had sworn a solemn oath to erase the Crusader presence from the Levantine coast forever. He wasn't there to just fight a battle, he wanted to dismantle the entire system.
Section 1. Masterminding an engineering siege, shifting from brute force to innovation. Recognizing that throwing men at thick stone walls was a losing game, the young sultan realized this siege required something history had rarely seen on this kind of scale. He basically treated the Siege of Acre less like a traditional medieval battle and way more like a massive, multidisciplinary engineering project. He assembled the absolute brightest minds of the era. He's pulling in expert chemists from Damascus, master engineers from Cairo, and highly specialized technicians from Aleppo. He pulled together the greatest scientific and engineering knowledge of the 13th century Middle East just to crack this one unbreakable nut.
92. That is the exact number of massive al-Mansouri trebuchets. These are gigantic siege engines that the Mamluks constructed and lined up right in front of the fortress walls of Acre. This wasn't just a handful of catapults taking random potshots. No, this was a synchronized artillery battery on a scale that is honestly hard to even fathom for the medieval period.
But honestly, to get those 92 trebuchets operational, the logistics were staggering. It took over 100 heavy ox carts, groaning under this immense weight, alongside thousands upon thousands of camels kicking up dust across the horizon, just to transport the heavy wooden components all the way from Damascus to the coast of Acre. The sheer noise, the effort, and the massive logistical chain required just to set up the chessboard before the battle even truly began is absolutely monumental.
Section 2. Tunnels of Fire and Chemistry. The Trap Beneath the Fortress. Because here is the crazy part. Those 92 trebuchets thundering away above ground, they were actually just a visible distraction. While the Crusaders were intensely focused on all that terrifying artillery raining down on them, the Sultan had brought in a highly specialized team of diggers to create an invisible, subterranean threat. Over the course of months, a literal ticking clock was set in the pitch black right beneath the Crusaders' feet. Working in total secrecy, they carved extensive tunnels deep beneath that supposedly impassable moat. They navigated through the earth to strike directly at the structural foundations of the Alana Tower, which was a huge strong point in the city's walls. And as they hollowed out this cavern beneath the heavy stone, they propped up the tunnel roof with these massive timber beams. Then the chemists step in. They pack the excavated space around these wooden supports with volatile crude oil and highly flammable chemical compounds. The trap was set.
Section 3. The May 8th Explosive Assault. The climax of the siege.
Now this is the moment where all of the Sultan's multidisciplinary planning comes together into this totally synchronized, sensory-rich masterpiece of warfare. It was designed to completely overwhelm the defenders from above and below, all at the exact same time. First, the Sultan gives the order, and all 92 trebuchets fire simultaneously. And they aren't just launching heavy stones, they are hurling blazing chemical projectiles into the city. Instantly, the sky darkens. Acre is plunged into utter chaos, covered in thick, choking smoke and fire clouds. And then, right in that exact moment of maximum distraction and panic above ground, the order is given to ignite the tunnels below. The crude oil and chemicals burst into a raging inferno, rapidly incinerating those massive timber beams holding up the earth, and the ground literally gives way under the tower's foundations.
The Alana Tower, standing with all its majestic, fearsome might, collapses into the earth with a terrifying, deafening explosion that actually shakes the bedrock of the city. In a single instant, the engineering and chemistry of the Mamluks tore a massive, gaping breach straight through the supposedly impregnable, unconquerable wall of Acre. The physical barrier was broken.
But wait, the Sultan wasn't finished. As soon as that massive breach was blasted into the wall, he instantly pivots to psychological warfare. He deployed 300 specially designated drummers mounted on camels with these heavy war drums, and they all struck their instruments in perfect, deafening unison. Just imagine the sheer sensory overload here. You've got choking smoke, raining fire, the explosive, ground-shaking collapse of a giant stone tower, followed immediately by the relentless, thunderous booming of 300 war drums vibrating in your chest. This tactical deployment of sound completely shattered whatever nervous resolve the surviving Crusaders had left. He weaponized sound to break their spirit before the final charge even began.
Section 4, Fall of the Crusaders. A 200-year empire collapses in hours. And I mean it literally was hours. Through that massive, smoking breach, Mamluk forces poured into the city, systematically crushing the elite, Templar, and Hospitaller Knights in no time at all. This completely and permanently ended the 200-year era of the Crusader States in the Middle East.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, the fall of Acre proves that even the most deeply entrenched power, the most massive and intimidating fortifications, will ultimately crumble when faced with three fundamental pillars of victory: advanced military engineering, the innovative use of chemistry, and fearless, unrelenting leadership. Basically, brute strength and thick walls are never enough when your opponent fundamentally changes the rules of the game through science and strategy.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If a 200-year unbreakable wall, guarded by elite forces and the best technology of its day, can fall so rapidly to a clever mix of multidisciplinary innovation, what unconquerable obstacles in our modern world are just waiting for the right mix of engineering and strategy? Whether it's in business, technology, or society, the blueprint from 1291 honestly still holds true today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this breakdown sparked your curiosity, and I'll catch you guys next time.